Today on the Bass Channel, we're checking out the brand new Euro LX and CST models from Spector. So let's start with the new LX. Many of the features of the previous LX have been carried over to this new model. This 5-string is a 35-inch scale with neck-through construction, a 3-piece maple neck with graphite rods, a 24-fret rosewood fingerboard with mother-of-pearl crown inlays, a 1.81-inch zinc and brass alloy nut, and 2 EMG DC dual-coil soap bar pickups. Now, here's where this new LX differs from the previous model. First, and subtle change here, but the new LX features a European alder body with a figured European maple top, whereas yesterday's model used a North American figured maple top. The previous LX also had an aluminum bridge, where this one uses a lightweight zinc and brass alloy bridge. I know, small differences, but worth noting. The bigger, more exciting differences come in the preamp and construction options. The new LX comes as a 4-string or 5-string and now has the option to be neck-through or bolt-on. And in case you're wondering what the difference is, I recently talked to John at Spector about that very thing.
For those who don't know, there are no bolts, no screws. This is 3 pieces of May bolt joined together and glued directly to the body ones. So it becomes part of the instrument, really, right? But sonically, a lot more mid-range, a lot more sustain, you know, a little bit more evenness. Doesn't have the quick transients and the kind of attack that a bolt-on does. It's a little bit more evenness, a little bit more gradual.
Also new for this model is the brand new proprietary Spector Legacy preamp designed in collaboration with Darkglass to, quote, deliver the classic Spector growl. be thorough in our comparisons here, the previous LX featured the Spector Tone Pump preamp. Now, in my opinion, the tone pump gets a little bit too much negative press on the internet, and yes, I was guilty of it too up until I figured out how to use it, but either way, if you didn't like the tone pump, I think you'll probably love the new Legacy preamp. By the way, all variations of the LX are also available in these colors. And before we move on to the new CST, I want to take a minute to run down the signal chain. No doubt by now you've noticed multiple amps throughout the tones so far, but there's also a few things you can't necessarily see. First of all the playing examples in this video are performed by myself, Chuck, Lenny, and Will Shively, who, fun fact, played with Boyz II Men for the last 11 years. All of those samples were recorded direct with a Radial JD7 into a Tascam US 20x20 and straight into Logic Pro 10. The JD7 can feed up to 7 amplifiers, but today I'm only using 3. The first is an Aguilar AG500. The knobs are all set flat and the bright switch is engaged. I've also loaded the Aguilar SL112 cab sim, and that's being recorded out of the DI output on the back. The second amp is the Tonehammer 500, again being recorded direct with all knobs set flat, but for this one I'm using the Aguilar SL410 cab sim for a slightly different flavor. The final amp, my personal favorite, is the Darkglass Microtube's X900. The settings are as shown, but I'm toggling the distortion engine on and off depending on the song. And the clean comp is also engaged. That signal is also being recorded direct with the cab sim currently unknown. My recording computer is a little outdated and the Darkglass suite won't load correctly for me, but it's the first cab sim out of the box, which I'm pretty sure is a DG410. In addition to the proper amps, I'm also running a pure, clean, unadulterated pre-EQ direct send from the AG500. And that's where the signal chain ends. No post effects, EQ, compression, or anything else has been added. One more thing to note, and here comes the pronunciation again, these come from the factory with D'Addario, D'Adrio, XL nickel strings, and on the examples with Lenny, that's what you're hearing. The problem is that my sweat is almost as corrosive as battery acid, and I can completely ruin a set of uncoated nickel strings in under an hour. So before I recorded my samples, I put a set of D'Addario coated XT strings on both of these basses. So those are the strings you're hearing when I play. The next problem I encountered is that the strings that went on the CST had a dead E string right out of the pack, so when Chuck got here to record, I replaced the strings on the CST with his set of Labella RX nickels. Honestly, I should have just put elixirs on both and been done with it, but hey, I didn't. Okay, so on to the CST. The CST is a brand new model in Spector's lineup, replacing the LT. The LT featured custom wound Bartolini pickups with a custom Darkglass tone capsule preamp. This new CST is the most premium option outside of the USA Custom Shop and takes inspiration from Spector's Woodstock line. The CST also comes with EMG X pickups and that same Spector Legacy preamp that we saw in the new LX. The difference here, though, is that both the 4-string and 5-string CST are PJ setups, rather than the 5-string being equipped with soap bars. And in case you were curious, here's what EMG says about the X Series pickups.
The PX has the X Series preamp, which has got a little more headroom, a little less compression than the original. Still has some compression. The 18-volt mod on an original recipe preamp, yeah, does get you that additional headroom like the X Series does. But that's you'll get the general idea, similar sort of response. You increase that headroom, you get a more natural response, but less compression. So not everybody's sound, but it's a good starting point.
The Euro CST features a highly figured poplar burl top, European ash body, and a 3-piece maple neck paired with an ebony fingerboard and abalone crown inlays. It also has a lightweight zinc and brass alloy bridge and nut, Godo tuners, and comes in 4 new finishes: natural gloss, red burst gloss, violet burst gloss, and black burst gloss. We're using the violet burst in this video, but I've got to say that red burst has got to be my favorite. So in case you're torn between the two models, here's a quick breakdown of the key differences. The LX uses original recipe EMG soap bars, where the CST features EMG PJX pickups. The LX has a satin finish and the CST is gloss. The LX comes as a bolt-on or neck-through, whereas the CST is neck-through only. The LX has mother-of-pearl inlays compared to the CST's abalone inlays. The CST features Godot tuners, where the LX features Spector branded tuners. Now, I didn't really notice any difference in tuning performance or stability between the two, but the Godot tuners definitely feel a bit nicer in the hand. Talking about the tonal differences is a little tricky because listening to an instrument while you're playing it is much different than playing back the recording. My thoughts and opinions of these two basses actually varied in each of those scenarios, so let's start with my thoughts while playing. My initial thoughts while playing each of these basses was that the CST was a bit more polite, more round, less sharp, and more of a mellow mid-range focus. It didn't strike me as a bass very well suited to heavier, aggressive rock and metal styles. The LX, on the other hand, was definitely more sharp, more aggressive in its top end, and had a really nice growl and compression in the lows. It felt like it responded a little better to my pick attack and was easily my favorite at first. However, listening to the playback, I feel a little differently. The first thing I noticed is the CST produces a bigger signal when all the other variables remain constant. The X Series pickups definitely live up to their claim of supplying more headroom. But other than for the level, that increased mid-range focus I talked about earlier also helps the bass stand out in a mix. And it's not an annoying honky mid-range, it's more of an overall kind of rounder sound that really just punches through. Here's the thing, every mix is different, every player is different, every ear is different, and what may sound great in one mix may sound completely wrong in another. So which one is better really comes down to you and your sound. The CST may pop out of one mix but sound too boomy and not articulate enough in another. The LX might get lost in certain mixes but slice through something else. Here's an example of what I mean. Watch how the CST completely cuts through the mid-scoop of the guitars in this example, leaving the LX feeling a little quieter. And now listen to how the top end of the LX slices right through this guitar tone, making the CST feel less articulate. preamp settings never changed between both of those examples, only the playstyle and the tones of the surrounding instruments. And just for fun, here are a few more back-to-back samples. Let me know which one you prefer for each. My initial incorrect perception of the CST's tone led me to try something that I personally haven't seen anyone else do with a Spector. Instead of trying to force the CVT to be more aggressive, I figured I'd lean into the more polite sound and try a set of the Labella Alento Flatwound strings on it. Again, we find ourselves in the same position. It's the perfect call for certain scenarios and possibly a mistake for others. Now, of course, I know I'm not the first person to put flats on a Spector, but I honestly haven't seen anyone else do it. So let me know your experience with putting flats on a Spector, whether you've done it yourself or you know someone else who has. Well, I think that just about wraps it up on the new Euro LX and CST models from Spector. If you want to learn more or pick one up for yourself, you can follow our affiliate links down below. It doesn't cost you anything extra, it just kicks a small percentage our way to keep these lights on. So thank you very much for watching, thank you to Spector, thank you to zZounds, and until next time, be safe, and I'll see you later.